In the summer of 2019, Alexandra Castile had a life that couldn't be better. A 21-year-old girl who was studying marketing at the University of Mississippi so that after her graduation she could reach her big dream in the fashion industry. But her life was not limited to her studies. Her close relationship with her family, her many friends, and her activity in sports created a happy life for her. And the forward path of her life was such that having a bright and dreamy future for her was not very unpredictable. But contrary to what she and everyone else expected, everything changed in the blink of an eye. And the reality is that the story also begins from Alexandra's secret. Hello, welcome to the True Crime Channel. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Alexandra was born on September 11, 1997, in St. Louis, the second largest city in the state of Missouri, America. Alexandra, who everyone called Ally, was the eldest child of her parents Cindy and Keith, and with her brother Andrew, who was 3 years younger, grew up in a warm and loving home. Ally was always active since childhood, and with time her interest in sports increased as well. She liked all sports, from swimming, running, cycling, physical education, to ballet and dance. In high school, she joined the cheerleading team and remained in this team until the end of her studies. Cheerleader, the teams in which girls and boys with fit bodies are members to encourage. Sports teams with coordinated group dances. In addition to this, she also went to lifeguard training classes and participated in several marathon races. During high school, she began earning money. Many times she worked as a babysitter on weekends, and in addition to this, she worked as a waitress in a golf club. Overall, she was a person who seemed not to waste a single moment in her life and reached her wishes in every way she could. Of course, Ally loved something else too. That was flowers and plants. Her mother Cindy says she loved the color and smell of flowers. So if you were looking for her, surely somewhere among the flowers you could find her. Ally's father about his daughter says that she really shows a lot of energy for the things she likes. And with her open and kind personality, she quickly convinces people. The University of Mississippi was ideal for Ally in every way. Its beautiful and flower-filled campus, its sports opportunities, and the many friends she had found there, with whom she went to bars and fun on weekends and enjoyed herself. During her first year, she met a young man named Brandon Theesfeld. They exchanged phone numbers and in the following days sent each other text messages, and after a while, they also met. But with time, their relationship did not progress much. They went to parties and celebrations together, drank, and enjoyed themselves. They even had sexual relations, but it seemed nothing more happened in the relationship. The thing that would really make them a couple was missing, especially from Brandon, who had made clear from the beginning that he wanted a casual relationship only for fun and not more than that. On the other hand, Ally from the start seemed to expect a little more from the relationship, or at least it could be understood that her feelings had become deeper in this friendly relationship. Nevertheless, she tried to adjust herself with Brandon's wishes, and this connection continued for the next 3 years. Of course, Ally sometimes had boyfriends in high school, but none of these relationships were serious and did not last long. While Ally always told her friends that she wanted a steady partner with whom she would later marry and form a big family, and her friends had understood from between her words that she considered Brandon the right case for marriage. She liked Brandon both in appearance and in behavior. He was truly the type of man Ally was always looking for. Ally would say Brandon was a respectful person, most of the time very generous, paid for everything, opened the car door for her, admired her, treated her well, and most importantly, was very attractive. In addition, he was very well known among those around him, and people knew him. All these points really impressed the 21-year-old girl. Of course, she also said that Brandon was arrogant, selfish, conceited, and proud, and sometimes did strange things, and these made them have severe fights. People around Brandon said that he sometimes suddenly went crazy. Ally's friends had many times suggested that she cut off her relationship with Brandon, but Ally said he had so many more good qualities that she could forgive him for such problems, and probably in the future, everything would also become better. One of Brandon's friends in a program had said that because of his special behaviors, many times they preferred not to go out with him because Brandon had the habit of causing trouble and seemed to enjoy provoking and angering others. Of course, his actions often did not cause problems for him and had no consequences, because from childhood, whenever a problem happened, he would call his father and his father came and solved it. Therefore, Brandon seemed to be one of those young people who had no responsibility for his actions, and everything was easily solved for him. Brandon Theesfeld, of course, had a powerful tool called money in his hands, which he showed off a lot with and impressed others with his spending. Money that was not his own at all, but his father's money. Brandon had never worked a single day in his life, so he had no money of his own. With all this, Ally continued her relationship with Brandon, regardless of how he treated her or what was happening behind the scenes, or whether Brandon was faithful to her or not. But she always said that she liked being with Brandon, regardless of all the good and bad around him, and thought they were alike. But in fact, she hoped that in the future they would become alike, and time would fix everything. In April 2019, when Ally was in her final year of university, something happened that shocked this 21-year-old girl, who was usually very calm and emotionally stable, and took her off the path of her life. While preparing for several important exams in the coming weeks, she found out she was pregnant. At first, she kept this news to herself, but a few days later, on April 14, 2019, she decided to tell the father of her child about her pregnancy and sent a message to Brandon, the only man she had had sexual relations with. She sent Brandon a picture of her positive pregnancy test and wrote below it, "We need to talk." But Brandon didn't want to talk, and he didn't want a child either. He very bluntly told her that it was still early in the pregnancy, so just take a pill and end everything, he said. Because I am sure of one thing, and that is, I definitely don't want a baby to ruin my life. I'm sorry. I don't want to upset you, but my opinion will never change. After sending this message, later investigation showed that on the internet, he was searching for abortion centers and also drugs that could cause the fetus to be destroyed, while Ally had told him several times that she never wanted to abort the baby. From there, Ally tried to stay in touch with him and persuade him to meet, but it seemed Brandon had no interest in Ally's long and detailed new messages in which she tried to convey her feelings to him. He either answered shortly or didn't answer her calls and messages at all, and even blocked her for a long time. Every time Ally tried to persuade Brandon to meet, Brandon suddenly canceled the meeting or did not come at all. And this process continued from the first weeks of April until early July 2019. As always, it seemed Brandon did not accept responsibility for his action. Ally had told several of her friends that she had a positive pregnancy test and Brandon was the father of the baby, but she had not shared this matter with her parents. The situation continued like this until one Friday in early July, when Ally became so desperate that she wrote a message to Brandon, Today I deleted all our photos. It seems you don't want to send me any message. So I drank alcohol all last night. Now my body should decide whether to keep the baby or not. In fact, she played this trick to pull Brandon toward herself and force him to finally show a reaction. And apparently, her plan worked, and Brandon sent her a message that he would come to Ally's house that weekend. But again, this did not happen, because apparently Brandon had completely lost his interest in Ally. Again, Ally started writing, and Brandon, who was now very annoyed, sent her a message. Please stop writing these long messages and instead take an appointment for abortion. And apart from this, I have nothing to say to you. On Friday, July 19, 2019, early in the morning, Ally spoke on the phone with her mother, Cindy. Everything apparently seemed very good, but Ally's mother felt her daughter was a little tired and disturbed. But Ally said it was because of exams that she was tired, and that she wanted to go out with her friends that night to the city and have a little fun. In the afternoon of July 19th, Ally had an appointment with her friends in Oxford, just 3 miles from the university. The students planned to first have lunch together and then go to some bars. As the surveillance camera films in Oxford Square showed, Ally came out of one bar at 11:50 p.m. and 2 minutes later, at 11:52 p.m., was recorded again by another camera walking toward the taxi stand. The next day, Saturday, July 20th, 2019, a police officer from Lafayette Sheriff's Office at 10:20 a.m. checked a nearly abandoned fishing camp on the north side of Sardis Lake. That place was a low-populated area where often local fishermen went, and sometimes also people who took their dogs for walks there. Deputy Gerald Bird could not believe what he saw there, in a remote spot behind the fishing camp. He found the body of a young woman lying face down on the ground, and around her, stains of blood filled the area. When police and the investigative team searched the crime scene, they found several bullet casings scattered in the grass. Very quickly, it became clear that the victim was Ally Castile, 21 years old, because the investigation group found a purse containing her driver's license and student card. Very quickly, it became clear that the girl had been dead for several hours, or better to say, had been killed. Before continuing the story, please support us with like and subscribe. Thank you. In the forensic examination, it was found that the bullets were fired from an Italian .40 caliber gun. 6 of the bullets had hit her chest and 3 others her back. The investigators first tried to understand what Ally was even doing there. The lake was more than 40 kilometers away from the university, and in that remote area, especially at night, very few people came. Her mobile phone was not found in her handbag, where normally her student card and driving license were. This was strange because Ally usually never separated her phone from herself. As the police soon realized, it seemed that the attacker had taken Ally's mobile phone with him. The question is, why? Maybe because in her phone there might have been things that would directly lead the police to tracking the suspect. That same day, interrogation of Ally's friends at the university began. Her friends gave information to the police about Ally's relationship with Brandon, which made the police suspicious of him. In addition, it quickly became clear to the police where Ally had been the night before her death, because they also reviewed all the surveillance recordings in Oxford Street. But the question was, what happened after that? As was clear from the films, Ally, after leaving the bar, went directly toward the taxi stand. Very soon, the police spoke with a taxi driver who said that around 12:12 Ally had gotten into his taxi, He said he drove Ally directly to the student dormitory. She was a little tipsy, but apart from that, there was nothing unusual. This story was also confirmed by Ally's roommate, who claimed that she heard the sound of the door opening and Ally entering, so she must have gone out again after midnight. Now the question is, why and with whom? If Ally's mobile phone had been found, they could easily have understood the answer to this question. But the officers were lucky because Ally had many of her programs on her watch. And from this way, the officers could read the messages from her Apple Watch. Now they knew exactly what Ally's friend said about her relationship with Brandon, and this guided the officers directly toward finding Brandon. But when the police contacted Brandon and asked him to come to the police station to talk with them, Brandon repeated exactly the same words he always said when Ally wanted to meet him, that unfortunately he had no time and was very busy. In fact, he had no desire at all to spend his Sunday night at the police station. He did not even think that maybe with cooperation and a simple explanation, he could remove suspicion from himself. But finally, he was forced to promise the officers that the next day, Monday, he would appear at the police station to testify. But guess what? The next day, he did not go there. But this time, Brandon Theesfeld was faced with the judicial authorities, and no excuse or pretext was accepted, and his rich father also had no influence on the matter. After he did not go to the police, immediately his arrest warrant was issued, and all police vehicles in the area searched for him and his pickup, or in other words, his black truck. And hours later, he had to answer about the murder case of Ally at the police station. The bullets of the gun that had been found in his car matched the shell casings found at the crime scene, and later it was proven that the drops of blood on the pullover also belonged to Ally. In addition to this, the Apple Watch information also showed that the last person who had contacted Ally before her death was Brandon. After Ally returned from meeting her friend, Brandon sent her a message that they should meet and talk. They arranged a meeting, and Ally took a taxi to Brandon's house. Right there at the door of the house, both of them got into Brandon's black pickup. Ally hoped that finally, after several weeks of waiting, she could talk comfortably with him about the baby. But Brandon drove toward the lake outside the city, that same Sardis Lake I mentioned. Probably Brandon had been there before and knew that at that time of night no one was around. So he took her toward a picnic bench, and they sat across from each other. It was a summer and moonlit night, and they talked for a short while. But suddenly, Brandon pulled out the gun that he had hidden under his shirt and shot Ally in the chest. From the force of this shot, the girl was thrown back and fell from the bench onto the grass. Brandon, without any feeling of sympathy or regret, walked around the table, stood over Ally, and fired more bullets into her. And then he left the dying girl right there and returned home. Brandon Theesfeld, 2 days later in the presence of his lawyer, probably because of the heavy evidence that existed against him, confessed that he had killed Ally. Although, according to his lawyer, at the time he committed this crime, he was under the influence of alcohol and cocaine. But in fact, the reality is that he had brought the gun 2 days earlier from home, and the murder was apparently premeditated. But what is interesting is that 2 days before Ally's murder, Brandon went to his parents' house in Fort Worth to take the gun he needed for this crime, because in Oxford, which was a university environment, he did not have permission to carry a gun. He knew that besides himself, his parents also had several guns. The only problem was that this gun was in Texas at home. So he went there to take it, and on the way back he took a picture of it and published it on Instagram. Below the photo he wrote, finally bringing my baby to Oxford. Hereby, my baby. He meant the gun. I really try in the criminal cases that I cover not to use sarcasm, because I think it is not right. But the reality is that sometimes it is really hard for me, because in cases like this, I ask myself, how unintelligent can a person be? Let's go back to the case. And it did not take long until they arrested him on Interstate 55. Which was heading north and out of the city toward Memphis. At the time of his arrest at a gas station, a .40 caliber gun and a bloody pullover were found on the back seat of his pickup. It was completely clear that Brandon intended to go by Interstate 55 to his parents' house in Fort Worth, but instead, he got caught by police and was arrested without resistance. In addition to that, on Brandon's laptop, which after his arrest was confiscated by the security unit, a series of searches were seen in his browser. How to escape after murder. How to hide the evidence. It seemed that he had reviewed different methods, including images that showed step-by-step how to tie someone up. Of course, Ally was not tied with rope. Therefore, it seemed that he gave up on this idea. And finally, he had searched on Google the methods of murders of Ted Bundy. It seemed that this young man had a wide vision of himself, and maybe also plans for his future that if he had not been caught, he would have carried them out, because apparently he had a lot of interest in guns. And killing a person did not give him a bad feeling. In late August 2019, only 1 month later, the district attorney of Lafayette issued a first-degree murder charge against Brandon. He said to the media in an interview that he was confident this murder was very cold-blooded and pre-planned by Brandon. Of course, because of the corona pandemic, his trial was postponed many times. But in August 2021, he was finally convicted of murder. About the trial itself, unfortunately not much information was published, just as it had been postponed twice before. In August 2021, because of the restrictions of the coronavirus, which in the United States was still very severe, probably this trial was held with a limited number of attendees. Also, there were few cameras in the courtroom, and the trial process also ended very quickly. Although Brandon had confessed before, still it seemed that before the trial, he said he was innocent and expressed regret, because his lawyer's strategy was to say he had done this under the influence of drugs and alcohol. But they did not succeed. And since in Mississippi, the death penalty law exists, with the discussion that was held between the judge, the lawyer, and the jury, it was decided that with Brandon's many confessions, he could be spared from execution. Of course, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Brandon will spend the rest of his life in a prison in Mississippi, without ever being free again. But still, in the middle of this, there was a secret. Surely you are asking. The secret that we talked about at the beginning of the case. What was it? The truth was not that Ally was pregnant. Rather, the secret was that Ally was not pregnant at all. In the autopsy tests, it was clearly determined that at the time of her murder, she was not pregnant. And there was not even any sign that she had ever been pregnant. There is a strong possibility that Ally Castile, in April 2019, when she sent the photo of her positive pregnancy test to Brandon, in fact was not pregnant. Therefore, this test she had ordered from somewhere like eBay or had faked, or had gotten it by any other method. It is probable that Ally did this in order to keep Brandon. However, many of her friends believe that at first she really was pregnant, but maybe because of an incident the fetus was miscarried. That it is very likely that everything was a lie from the beginning, and she did this to attract Brandon's attention. Just as Brandon also tried by different actions to attract the attention of many women. But in the end, no one knows the truth. And the only truth that exists is that a young girl full of passion for life, and a young man who, of course, was not well raised, because of a baby that did not even exist. Their lives were destroyed, and a great sorrow was placed forever on the hearts of their families. Surely write your opinions for me in the comments. And by the way, with just a few seconds of liking and subscribing, you give us a lot of motivation to progress and make more cases. Thank you.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into, well, a really compelling and quite tragic story from the summer of 2019. It's about Alexandra Castile, ally, a vibrant university student, her very complicated relationship, and a pretty shocking secret that ultimately led to her death. A lot of our discussion today is drawn from sources like the deceptive pregnancy and a cheerleader's demise, which gives a really intimate look into these events.
Right, and our mission really is to carefully unpack all the layers of this devastating case. We'll go from, the promising start of her young life through the chilling details that emerged, and consider that whole chain of events, the consequences. They just changed everything for everyone involved. It's a case that really makes you question motivation, desperation.
It really does. It's such a stark reminder, isn't it? How quickly a life that seems so full of potential can just be, derailed by things hidden beneath the surface.
Makes you wonder what was really going on.
So let's start at the beginning. Alexandra Madison Castile, Allie, born St. Louis, September 97. Eldest of two, grew up in a warm, loving home. At 21, she's studying marketing at the University of Mississippi. Ole Miss, big dreams, fashion industry. But her life wasn't just studies, it was packed. Super close with her family, loads of friends, and incredibly involved in sports.
Yeah, she was always active right from childhood. I mean, the list is long. Swimming, running, cycling, PE, ballet, dance. She was a dedicated high school cheerleader right up until graduation. Even did lifeguard training, ran marathons.
Always busy. Babysitting weekends, waitressing at a golf club, just someone who really seemed to seize every moment, always pushing forward.
And her parents' descriptions, they really bring her to life. Her mom, Cindy, apparently used to say you could always find Allie among the flowers, just loved beautiful, vibrant things. Her dad talked about her energy, how she could win people over so quickly with this open, kind personality.
So this energetic, charming young woman finds Ole Miss, beautiful campus, loads of sports, fun weekends with friends.
Yeah, it seemed like the perfect fit. Everyone just saw this bright, dreamy future ahead for her. No question.
A really vibrant picture, full of potential, youthful optimism. But like you said, the currents underneath, often more turbulent. And that brings us to Brandon Theesfeld. Allie met him during her first year at university. Their relationship, over the next 3 years, it was mostly casual. Parties, celebrations, drinking, sex. But it lacked any real depth or commitment.
Right, and Brandon was apparently very clear about that. He wanted casual fun, that was it. Allie, though, she tried to go along with it, but deep down, it seems she wanted more. She saw him as, potential husband material, someone to have a big family with.
Which is so striking because she seemed quite conflicted about him herself, didn't she?
Absolutely. She definitely saw good qualities. She told friends he was respectful, generous, sometimes paying for things, opening doors. He admired her, treated her well in some ways. Plus, he was good-looking, popular.
Sure. Those things can be very attractive, especially to a 21-year-old looking for something serious.
But then, there are these huge red flags right alongside those positives. Allie also described him as arrogant, selfish, conceited, proud. He had these strange behaviors sometimes, which led to really severe fights. And even Brandon's own friends apparently often didn't want to hang out with him because he'd cause trouble, seemed to enjoy provoking people.
So charm and generosity on one side, but this really troubling arrogance and, troublemaking tendency on the other. A real Jekyll and Hyde thing.
Exactly. And Allie was sort of caught in that push and pull.
And his background didn't help matters, did it?
Not at all. Never worked a day in his life, apparently. Used his dad's money to impress people. And crucially, His father always stepped in to fix his problems.
So no real consequences for his actions. That fosters a dangerous attitude.
Definitely. A sense of impunity, perhaps. Allie's friends, they saw it. They told her repeatedly, maybe cut ties. But Allie, she kept hoping things would get better, focused on the good bits, the potential she saw.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how she clung to that potential despite all those clear warnings.
It really is. And that brings us to April 2019, Allie's final year.
Right. And this is where things take a really dramatic turn. Allie, who was usually seen as calm, emotionally stable, she finds out she's pregnant.
A huge shock for her, clearly. She kept it secret initially.
But then, April 14th, 2019, she makes this, brave but maybe desperate decision, sends Brandon a picture of a positive pregnancy test. The message just said, we need to talk.
And Brandon's reaction? Immediate. And just brutally blunt. He did not want a child, told her it was early enough, quote, take a pill and end everything.
Chilling. His exact words were something like, I definitely don't want a baby to ruin my life. I'm sorry, I don't want to upset you, but my opinion will never change. Just cold.
And it gets darker. Later investigations found his online searches around that time looking for abortion clinics, drugs to terminate a pregnancy.
Even though Allie kept telling him she didn't want an abortion?
Exactly. And from that point, April through early July, Brandon just consistently avoided her. Short replies, ignoring calls, messages. Even blocking her sometimes, just completely shirking responsibility.
Wow, so Allie's dealing with this huge news, this harsh rejection, and he's just ghosting her.
Pretty much. She did confide in several friends about the pregnancy, but significantly not her parents.
That says a lot about the pressure she must have felt, facing that rejection, feeling isolated.
It must have been incredibly lonely, going through something so huge, and the father's reaction is not just rejection, but actively looking for ways to end it while cutting her off. It's an immense burden.
And that isolation, that pressure, it seems to have fueled this growing desperation in her.
Definitely. By early July, you can really feel it. One Friday, she sends Brandon this message, says she deleted their photos, drank all night, and would just let her body decide whether to keep the baby or not.
A desperate trick, really. A plea to get any kind of reaction out of him. Some sign he cared, maybe?
It seems like it. And for a moment, it looked like it worked. He actually promised to visit her that weekend.
But he didn't show up.
Nope. True to form, he bailed. Apparently just completely lost interest.
And his final message to her, just brutal.
Yeah. He was clearly annoyed by then. Sent her something like, please stop writing these long messages and instead take an appointment for abortion. And apart from this, I have nothing to say to you.
Wow. Just nothing.
So looking back at that, what do you think Allie was really hoping for at that point? Was it still hope or just exhaustion?
That's tough to say for sure, but given that desperate trick with the alcohol, it feels less like genuine hope he'd change and more like maybe profound emotional exhaustion, just needing some kind of response, maybe forcing his hand somehow.
A really desperate state. And that leads us tragically to her last day.
Friday, July 19th, 2019. That morning, she talked to her mom, Cindy, on the phone.
Right. Cindy said she sounded a bit tired, maybe disturbed. Allie just brushed it off as exam stress, said she was looking forward to a night out with friends in Oxford. Later that day, surveillance footage tracks her movements in Oxford Square, seen leaving a bar just before midnight, 11:50 p.m.
And then just 2 minutes later, 11:52 p.m., another camera catches her walking towards a taxi stand.
We know she got a taxi home. The driver confirmed it, dropped her off around 12 a.m. on Saturday, July 20th. Her roommate even heard her come into the dorm.
Which raises that unsettling question. If she was home safe, why did she go out again, and who with, after midnight?
Based on everything else, it seems almost certain she must have been contacted by Brandon after she got back. Lured out, maybe, thinking they'd finally talk.
Because the next morning,
Saturday, July 20th, around 10:20 a.m., Deputy Jared Burt is doing routine checks at an almost abandoned fishing camp, north side of Sardis Lake. It's remote, over 40 kilometers from the university.
And that's where he found her.
Yeah. Behind the fishing camp, Allie's body, face down, bloodstains all around.
Just horrific.
The scene itself. Police found several .40 caliber bullet casings in the grass. Forensics later confirmed 9 bullets hit Allie, 6 in the chest, 3 in the back.
In a crucial detail, her phone was missing. Allie always had her phone.
Right. Investigators realized immediately the attacker must have taken it. And that missing phone,
Yep.
it became a key piece, didn't it?
Absolutely. The investigation very quickly zeroed in on Brandon. Allie's friends filled them in on the relationship, the pregnancy situation. He was immediately the prime suspect.
Surveillance confirmed her movements until she got back to her dorm.
But the real breakthrough, her Apple Watch, police were able to access messages from it.
And that confirmed Brandon was the last person who contacted her before she died.
Exactly. So when the police contacted Brandon, his reaction was telling.
Very telling, and very consistent with his pattern with Allie. Claimed he was busy, couldn't meet, then promised he'd come to the station on Monday, and just didn't show up.
Avoiding responsibility again. But this time, it was the police.
Right. Excuses didn't work. They issued an immediate arrest warrant. Tracked down his black pickup truck.
And they caught him heading out of town.
Yep. On Interstate 55, heading north towards Memphis. And crucially, in the back seat of the truck, they found a .40 caliber handgun and a pullover with bloodstains on it.
The gun matched the casings.
Perfect match. And the blood on the pullover. DNA confirmed it was Allie's. The evidence was just overwhelming.
So putting it all together from the Apple Watch data, what happened after she got back to the dorm?
It seems Brandon messaged her, arranged to meet. Allie then took another taxi, this time to Brandon's house. They both got into his black pickup. Allie must have thought finally they were going to talk about the baby.
But he didn't drive somewhere to talk.
No. He drove her out to that remote spot at Sardis Lake, a place he likely knew would be deserted late at night. They sat at a picnic bench, apparently talked for a short time.
And then?
Then, Brandon pulled out the gun he'd hidden, shot her in the chest. As she fell, he walked around the table and fired more bullets into her, then just left her there.
The calculation involved?
Yeah.
It's just chilling. And the premeditation evidence was strong, wasn't it?
Incredibly strong. Just 2 days before the murder, Brandon drove all the way from Oxford to his parents' house in Fort Worth, Texas.
Why?
Specifically to get that .40 caliber gun. He didn't have permission to carry one in Oxford, you see.
Wow. And didn't he post about it?
He did. Posted a picture of the gun on Instagram. The caption was, "Finally bringing my baby to Oxford." Not a baby. The gun is just brazen.
Unbelievable. And there was more on his laptop, right?
Yes. Confiscated after his arrest, his browser history showed searches like how to escape after murder, how to hide the evidence, even image searches for how to tie someone up and research into the methods of murders of Ted Bundy.
Good grief. This wasn't passion. This was cold, calculated planning.
Absolutely. Deeply disturbing planning.
So, faced with all that, he confessed.
He did. 2 days after his arrest, the evidence was just too much. His lawyer tried the under the influence defense, alcohol, cocaine, but it didn't fly.
Yeah.
Not with that level of clear premeditation.
Retrieving the gun days before the searches.
Exactly. So August 2021, after some pandemic delays, he was convicted of first-degree murder.
Mississippi has the death penalty, but he didn't get it.
No. His confession likely spared him execution. He received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He'll spend the rest of his life behind bars.
A grim end. But there's still that secret, the one we mentioned right at the start. The detail that just reframes this whole tragedy.
Right. The question lingering over everything.
Yeah.
What was that secret?
And the answer is just devastating.
It is. The autopsy. The tests conclusively determined Allie was not pregnant when she was murdered.
Not pregnant.
Not pregnant, and no signs she had ever been pregnant recently.
The positive test back in April.
It leads to this really strong, almost certain possibility that Allie either faked that test or somehow acquired it. You know, you could buy them online, apparently.
She faked the pregnancy to try and keep him.
It strongly appears so, to try and force some kind of commitment from Brandon. Now, some friends did believe maybe she was pregnant initially, then had a miscarriage.
But the autopsy evidence points the other way.
Overwhelmingly, it suggests the pregnancy was likely a fabrication from the start, an incredibly extreme, desperate measure to get Brandon's attention, built on a lie.
So the entire conflict, the rejection, the desperation, the murder, it was all based on something that wasn't even real.
Precisely. It wasn't just miscommunication. It was a tragedy built on a fundamental deception, a fabricated reality that just spiraled completely out of control.
Wow. It really forces you to think, doesn't it? What happens when the whole premise of a conflict is just false? How that lie just consumes everyone.
It highlights this profound, unsettling irony. Allie's vibrant life, gone. Brandon's future, destroyed. All ultimately because of a baby that didn't exist. The futility is just staggering.
So this deep dive. We've peeled back the layers on Allie's life, Brandon's disturbing character, the desperate relationship dynamics, the cold-blooded murder, and then that final stunning twist of the fabricated pregnancy.
Yeah. The sorrow for both families is just immense.
Yeah.
And the sheer waste, driven by something unreal. It's such a stark reminder, isn't it? Devastating consequences when perception completely warps reality, when manipulation takes over, when responsibility is just absent.
A catastrophic chain reaction ignited by deception.
Exactly.
It leaves you with a heavy thought, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much of our own view of reality is maybe shaped by what we desperately want? And what are the unforeseen costs when those personal realities clash, especially when one is built on such a profound untruth?
Yeah.
Something to definitely consider.